What's up, Packer fans? Happy Friday. Welcome into the Pack-A-Day podcast here on YouTube. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at AndyHermanNFL. It was another interesting day of free agency news and notes, but maybe not quite so much for the Packers. And I know everyone is getting a little bit antsy, and of course, there's like the meme of somebody holding a stick saying do something, and I think everyone's kind of feeling that way with Brian Gutekunst and the Packers organization, just wanting something. Give us at least one present to unwrap so that we've got something that we can take a look at and see how it might fit with the team. And it just feels like everyone else has done something and the Packers have not. So I fully understand that and get that. However, I do still think that there is a move that will come, as I've said all along. I do think it'll be at the cornerback position, not quarterback, cornerback. And I do think they're going to make some significant changes there. Maybe it's a defensive lineman, maybe it's an offensive lineman, maybe it's a wide receiver, who knows? But I do think they will make some sort of move this year in free agency. And I just think sometimes, I know patience is hard in these situations as you see other teams start building up their players and building up their rosters and trying to make a run at a Super Bowl. But let's remember, the Super Bowl is not won in the first couple of days of free agency. In fact, usually those are some of the worst deals that can really come back to bite you. I can honestly say, and again, I'm not just saying this, I can honestly say there hasn't been a deal that's happened yet where I looked at him and like, man, that is just a phenomenal deal, and I can't believe Green Bay wasn't in on that. Desmond King signed an interesting deal. It was like 1 year, $3.5 million, I want to say, with the Texans on Thursday. That's somewhat interesting, but I mean, Desmond King hasn't done a lot the last couple of years. He didn't help the Titans. He struggled with the Chargers before that. He just isn't at the same level that he came into the league at. And I think, I just don't know how much he moves the needle up from a Chandon Sullivan, so to speak. I think, Troy Hill signed a fairly reasonable contract. It's tough to say how much they value Troy Hill. Again, the easy, dots to connect here is that he comes from the Rams, same as Joe Barry, and maybe they would have wanted him. The deal seemed reasonable enough that they could have been in on it, but obviously they weren't, or at least not to the extent that the Browns were, who ultimately end up signing Hill. So I do think they'll make a move, but there's not been anything yet at any position where I'm just like, man, I cannot believe Green Bay missed out on that deal. Will Fuller today, or Thursday, signed for $10 million for a single season on a 1-year deal. No way should Green Bay be in on that deal for Will Fuller. And I was going to actually go over this later, but let's just get into it right now. I don't think Green Bay has any interest in spending big money on a wide receiver. And where I was going to go with this is Scott Pioli, who's a former GM, I think he was a former GM, recently tweeted out, if I'm a free agent wide receiver and frustrated with the market, I would run to the Packers and Aaron Rodgers on a 1-year deal with incentives, join an elite quarterback and have a great season, get paid in 2022 in the cap room, with cap room and cash, elite quarterback and winning raises all boats. So basically what he's saying here is, hey, if some of these receivers are frustrated with the market, go sign Green Bay for a lesser market deal, go out and ball with Aaron Rodgers, show that you're capable of being a top receiver, and then get paid a massive amount of money in 2022. So that's what he's saying. And there's definitely logic there, no question about it. But go back to Ty Dunn's article with MVS and what MVS recently said about how it's difficult to play and come in and learn and play at wide receiver immediately, because you have to learn Matt LaFleur's offense, and then you have to learn Aaron Rodgers' offense. He basically equated it to learning 2 offenses, and just learning one offense is hard enough. And I don't think people quite get that, where, you see these players change from teams. And sometimes the reason that it's so difficult to move from team to team and have success is because there is a learning curve going from one offense to another. And now if you're coming to Green Bay, as MVS is mentioning, you basically have 2 offenses to learn. The one that is in theory, and then all the checks at the line with Rodgers and all the off-script stuff and where he wants you to run routes precisely. And we know that Rodgers has very little accident forgiveness for people who are not in the right spot at the right time and doing what they're supposed to do. So Green Bay going out and signing a 1-year deal for a wide receiver in a big money deal, I don't see that happening. And there could be a couple guys, like the guy that makes sense would be like a Kenny Golladay. Like, right, how could you not turn that down if he was interested in playing on a 1-year deal that was a little bit cheaper than, but Kenny Galladay's not the guy that's not going to get paid. He's still going to get top tier money in the next couple days here. Same with like a Juju Smith-Schuster. And I don't see any other receiver that Green Bay is going to have a ton of interest in. Again, Will Fuller just signed for 1 year, $10 million. And I don't think Green Bay's anywhere near that number. And remember that in Green Bay, that wide receiver position is not just a playmaker. It's not just a run route catch ball position. It is a blocker. It is doing all the dirty work for the wide receiver screens, for Aaron Jones in the running game. There is a lot more nuance to the wide receiver position in this Matt LaFleur offense than there is in other places. And if you can't come in and be a complete wide receiver, it's going to be a struggle for you to get out on the field. And to kind of expound upon that, and I've mentioned this before, you also are in a spot with Green Bay right now with Lazard, Adams, MVS, and maybe even a Devin Funchess, Equanimeous St. Brown. Those guys do not play special teams. So if you're bringing in another receiver that doesn't play teams, now you've got 6 wide receivers on your roster. And again, EQ, Devin Funchess aren't locks to make the team, but the top receivers on your team all not contributing to a core piece of your team. And it's tough to activate 5-6 receivers on a game day if you're not going to have any of them play special teams. It makes it very, very difficult. And here's the other thing. Let's say Green Bay has $10 million left on a 1-year deal to spend, something like that, right? Let's say that's what it would take to get one of these top tier receivers that he's talking about or improve the receiver position. Would you rather spend $10 million on corner, defensive line, or wide receiver? And here's my point being here, right? We obviously don't know what's going to happen in the draft, but 10 mil on a corner, you're getting a legit guy to start opposite Jair Alexander. And right now, outside of Alexander and maybe Sullivan, you have nobody that you trust at this point in time. All right. Defensive line. Would you rather have 10 million at wide receiver or 10 million is going to get you a legit defensive lineman next to Kenny Clark? Like a legit defensive lineman that is going to change the front of that defense and help you exponentially. That replaces snaps of Dean Lowry and maybe a little bit of Kingsley Keke and then obviously the depth behind that. Montravius Adams signs with the Patriots today. Tyler Lancaster isn't back on the team. Like they have legitimate depth concerns there. And not only that, but if you get a top tier defensive lineman, he along with Kenny Clark are playing the majority of those snaps. Z or Rashawn Gary can move inside on passing downs. Kingsley Keke is now a rotational player, which probably fits him a little bit better. You get a major upgrade there. You add a wide receiver for $10 million, and yes, you can probably improve the position, but most of the time, a lot of times Green Bay's in 2 wide receivers or 3 wide receivers. And if you're in 3 wides with Adams and a free agent and let's say either Lazard or MVS, one of those other guys is just on the bench. And I would make a strong argument that Lazard and MVS have more value than the 3rd or 4th defensive lineman and certainly more than the 3rd or 4th corner. Like you benching one of those guys because you signed a new receiver doesn't do you a ton of good. And again, the fact that they know the offense, they have that familiarity with Rodgers, that this new wide receiver along with the guys already on the team can't play special teams. I just don't see it in the cards for Green Bay to sign any sort of receiver that's going to be enough of an upgrade over Lazard or MVS that they're actually going to get playing time and learn the system quick enough and be an impact player. That money is just so much better spent along the defensive line or cornerback position. So as I'm saying this, look for the Packers to sign a big wide receiver as probably already as you're listening to this, but I just don't see that happening. And I don't think that's the right move, to be frank. So don't get your hopes up about a wide receiver. Scott Pioli makes a ton of sense in his thought process for wide receivers on the open market, but it seems like the floodgates have opened up a little bit more for wide receivers with Will Fuller getting that $10 million, almost all guaranteed, if not all guaranteed by the Miami Dolphins. So they're starting to get paid, and I don't see that. I mentioned Montravius Adams. He goes to the Patriots, will not be back in Green Bay. So that's one of those depth pieces that Green Bay is going to have to fill moving forward. And then the other thing, so I think there's this idea out there, and this is where I was going to go originally, but that the Packers are not doing everything in their power to go all in. And I started mentioning, it's tough to be patient as other teams are signing players across the league. But this offseason has legitimately been very, very close to a complete all-in move. And if they go out and they do sign one more big player, whether it's at corner, defensive line, if it is at wide receiver, wherever it may be, if they go out and sign one more big player, to me, this is as all-in of an offseason as you can possibly have. It doesn't seem that way because it's the same team as they had last year, minus Corey Linsley and Jamal Williams right now, right? It doesn't seem like all-in because it's the same. It's, if not a little bit worse. But what they've done to move Preston Smith's contract into the future, move Zadarius Smith's contract into the future, part of Adrian Amos, releasing Kirksey and Rick Wagner to free up more space, bringing back Aaron Jones, and those sort of moves, those are all-in type of moves to keep this current team together, who's been to back-to-back NFC championships, who certainly had the talent to win it last year, played their worst game at the wrong time against Tampa Bay, against a team that frankly just wasn't a great matchup, especially with Bakhtiari out. And, Green Bay's looking to bring that team back and compete at a high level again. And what you look around, they're going to win the NFC North and, barring any crazy injuries. And there's, the Saints are going to be worse. Tampa's going to be about the same. There's nobody in the NFC East. I mean, Dallas will get Dak back, but there's nobody in the NFC East that's super scary. The NFC West, I think Seattle takes a step back. Arizona's making a run at things. You can tell that. The Rams will be better with Stafford, but they're going to be one of maybe 4 teams, in my opinion, that can make a legitimate run at a Super Bowl in the NFC. And I still think as they add a player, those odds may even go up. And if they can get better in the draft and fill some holes, have Rashawn Gary, Darnell Savage, Kingsley Keke, and some of those pieces, MVS, so on and so forth, take a step, AJ Dillon, I think this can be as good of a team, if not better than they were a season ago, even without a Corey Linsley. So it doesn't seem like an all-in approach, but what they've done to keep this together has been a massive undertaking that's going to cost them in future years because of how much money they've borrowed from the future already. And more is coming. They're going to have to restructure either Rodgers or Adams in order to free up some more space, just to have a practice squad, have 53 guys on the roster and all those sorts of things, have some money in season for injuries so they can keep signing people to the roster when people go on IR. They're going to have to do more. And again, I still think there's a way to bring on a potential big-time player if they want to do that, or at least a mid-tier player. So it doesn't feel like Green Bay has been in an all-in mode because they're the same team for the most part, minus a couple players, but they really, really have been in order to get into this situation. And you can argue all day long, and I'm not going to argue against you as to whether or not maybe the best use of those resources with, basically keeping Preston Smith and re-signing Aaron Jones, if maybe that couldn't have been better used on improving the defense or keeping Corey Linsley along the offensive line. A variety of different things that they could have done differently. There's an argument to be made there. Dean Lowry's still on the team. You could free up an additional, few million that way if they want to, and they still could do that. But as of now, Green Bay felt like, the way that they wanted to use those resources was to keep Preston and Aaron Jones and Dean Lowry. And you can say that that's the wrong use of those resources. And again, I'm not going to argue against you, but it is very difficult to make an argument that they have not taken an all-in approach. And there's the only thing they have yet to do, of course, is really restructure Rodgers and extend Devontae. And again, one of those for sure is coming because they have to. Unless something crazy happens, one of those has to come just to be able to operate this season. If they do both and sign one more big player, they've gone all in. It's not there yet. They still have some things that they need to do to get to that point, but they are very close to being all in on this season and then having some crazy decisions to make next year based on the cap and based off of, just where they're at and over the cap at this point because they borrowed so much from next year. It's going to be a slippery slope moving forward, but it's going to be, it'll be interesting to see how they handle it. But they're making a real effort to try to win a Super Bowl this season, even if it doesn't feel like it at the forefront. All right, a couple other really quick things. Tim Backus, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he wrote an article for Cheesehead TV that's basically said, to some extent, read the article, but, if Rodgers doesn't, rework his contract or have some sort of restructure or extension, that he will potentially be, there's a good chance that he's traded next season. It's a really good article, and he's not necessarily wrong. That certainly could happen. But where I'm at with Aaron Rodgers right now is, and in Green Bay, first of all, we don't know. By the time tomorrow hits, Green Bay maybe has already extended Rodgers. That could happen at any time, and we just don't know what's going to happen with it right now. But if he's not extended, if they don't touch his contract, yes, that sends a message, but I still think it's more likely that they take a wait and see approach. It's not that they're deciding right now that they are eventually going to cut Rodgers. They're taking this opportunity right now to say, we want the ability to cut or trade Rodgers in the future. We're not set on doing it, but if Love is great or if Rodgers falls off, we want that flexibility. That's what this is. It's not a guarantee that they cut or trade him moving forward. Could happen, but I think it would be more that they want the flexibility to have that option should Love overperform or be ready or should Rodgers fall off. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. In fact, I would say it's a better chance in 2023 than 2022, but if they don't do anything, and if they keep it as is or just do a minor move, it's certainly going to have that connotation, and it's certainly going to leave open the possibility that this year or next year could be Aaron Rodgers' last year as a Packer. So good article by Tim, check it out. But I think it's more likely that it's not a foregone conclusion, just that they want to keep the options open, which isn't necessarily the worst idea when you've got a quarterback starting to hit almost year 40 in his life, basically. So last but not least, goodbye, Mitch Trubisky. We will miss you. We will not forget you. You have been everything that Packer fans could have possibly hoped for and so much more. We wish you nothing but the best of luck in Buffalo. In fact, if you could go out and become a phenomenal quarterback at another organization just to really dig the salt in the wounds of Bear fans, more power to you. So you have a longtime supporter in Packer fans. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being selected over Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. Thank you for making the Bears who they are today. I know you were a Packer fan from day one. You have a fan in all of us for the rest of your career. So God bless Mitch Trubisky. Thank you for your service, and we will be wishing you the best of luck in Buffalo. That's going to do it for me today. Make sure to check out Andrew and Kyle on today's audio version of the podcast. I'll be right back here tomorrow, wherever, or subscribe, I should say, to YouTube. Until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.